And I want to invite us all to go into a kind of meditative place, slowing down, closing our eyes. And as always, we start with a breath. Consciously breathing at your own pace. Let's always use this quiet time to quiet the mind. Let go of any other distractions, whatever else you were thinking or doing before coming into class. And especially for today's class, we want to be connected to our body. We want to see what body sensations correspond with our emotions. So we want to move out of our head and into our body, into our emotions. So right now, what are you feeling? What sensations do you notice in your body? Are there places where there's contraction or discomfort? Maybe places that you're so used to the discomfort, you don't even notice it until you put some attention there. And what are two strong emotions that you've felt today? They can be comfortable or uncomfortable. But I want to ask you to identify 2 times today that you had a strong emotion coming up. Anger, sadness, fear, happiness, relaxation. Those are just a few. And when you've identified the 2 emotions that you're remembering that you experienced today, take some time and what sensations take place in your body when you're feeling that emotion? Can you connect your emotions, at least these 2 that you've chosen that you experienced today, to body sensations? And when you've identified the 2 and corresponding body sensations and you feel ready to come back into the room, you can open your eyes. Okay. I'll give an example, and then I'm going to ask people to model, or I'm going to model and then I'm going to ask everybody, because it's a small, intimate group tonight, everyone to share at least one of the emotions that you had today, and if you were able to identify corresponding body sensations. So I was really tired. I woke up very tired this morning and frustrated because they turned the power off where I live. So I had to pack up and drive down to Tiburon. And so I was tired and I was frustrated. And when that happens, there's just like a heaviness, just like felt heavy. Um, and my second emotion that I chose is while I was driving, I ended up doing a session with a client, and she really responded super well to some of my practices. And as she was like, oh my God, I love this, God, I love working with you. I got all excited and I became very alert. Like, the heaviness lifted, and all of a sudden I felt excited and alert as I was talking to her. And excited and alert, probably my heart's beating a little bit faster, and I'm just much more, I'm fully present. I'm awake, I'm alert. So noticing the difference between tired and frustrated and to excited and alert are the two that I chose. Who would like to go first or second if we're counting me? Great, Jason.
Cool. So, yeah, today I was able to experience the transition from fear into anger, where I was very contracted, feeling fearful about, um, well, some projected situation in the future that hasn't even actually come to pass yet, but my mind was future tripping. And I had this very deep, contracted physical state in response to that whole projection. And, and then I'll keep the details to myself. But then there was an external event that happened that tapped into um, a sensitive spot within me, and I became angry about an actual situation that I was in physically, and I had my whole inward contracted state transition almost instantly into the exact opposite, which is this highly activated outward motion where um, it's almost like having a fire hose and like trying to stop it with one hand and making sure that the parts that are leaking out aren't hitting anybody. Um, but the exact opposite energy on a exaggerated level. So it was really interesting to see the contrast so immediately like that.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Jason. Uh, I liked everything you shared, and certainly at the beginning when it was talking about future tripping, how much we trigger our reptile brain just by projecting fear of the future, fearful thoughts. So that's a good awareness to have. Who'd like to go next? Daniel. And try and keep it to about a minute per share if possible. And after Daniel, it'll be Debbie. You're up, Daniel. And we can't hear you. Still can't hear you. I'll tell you what, while you work on that, I'm going to pop on Debbie, okay? Debbie, you're up.
Hi, everybody. Good evening. So what came up for me was first extreme frustration this morning in a conversation where I felt like I wasn't being heard, and actually kind of exclaiming that I was getting very frustrated in this conversation where I'm just not feeling heard. And so it came up in me like right up in my throat. My throat was constricting because I wasn't speaking. If I'm not being heard, I'm not speaking clearly. So that came up, and I worked through that. And then later I had a feeling of joy and elation from something that I did for a friend of mine that they loved. And that made me feel freaking fabulous. And I loved getting out of my own head. And sometimes that's what I'll do is I do something for somebody else, or I'll do whatever, because that short shift is what helped me. But I went into joy and like elation feeling, and that is an explosive feeling from my heart, and it felt just great. And I was in a whole lot of gratitude over that moment. So those are my two, Scott, and everybody.
Well, thank you for sharing. You know, uh, Something Debbie just shared that is a great reminder. When any of us are working with somebody who's really focused on how hard their life is, support them to find a way to contribute to the well-being of others. As Marshall Rosenberg said, contributing to the well-being of others is truly the greatest joy in life. And it's such a wonderful way to shift out of poor me or frustration or agitation. So thanks for that reminder, Debbie. Who's up next? Daniel, did you get your audio working?
Did I?
You
Can you hear me?
did.
Oh,
Yeah.
good.
Okay.
Yeah, this afternoon, I was running out of time for the things I was doing, and I got really frustrated. And what happened was I lost sort of spatial awareness, and I kept, bumping into things and knocking things over, which made me more frustrated. And that sort of escalated. And then I got in the car, and I was going to run a couple errands before this, and I just screamed in the car and yelled, and it just expressed the frustration. And after I did that, I felt this incredible sense of relief and openness, and it seemed like the colors of the world came back. And yeah, both feelings right in a row.
Beautiful. Just how perfectly human. Isn't it wonderful as we listen to each other? It just creates such a humanity because we can all connect with everybody's story. It's like, oh, wow, you do that too? Oh, wow, that happens to you? All right, but you live in Hawaii. I thought you were always happy dude, right? Right, or whatever it is, yeah. So thank you, Daniel. Who's up next? Laura.
I got it. Okay. Hi, guys. So mine's very short, and it wasn't really, it's probably just what Scott or somebody else said about Jason, about future tripping. So I find myself future tripping, and I just feel frustrated. I can locate that really distinctly in my solar plexus. And then that just leads right like a beeline to anxiety. And that I feel kind of in my throat and my shoulders. And then the good news is I notice that I'm doing that. And then I just, do like Ho'oponopono or something to sort of calm my nerves down and get back in the present moment. And it happens quite often throughout the day, actually. But I feel like I have a good practice to get myself like noticing my body and then getting centered.
What a wonderful clarity that Laura just described, that she understands one thing creates a beeline, the anxiety, and then where she feels it in her body, and then what she does to calm her nervous system. Yeah. And that is a really beautiful description of the practice. And that's something really wonderful for all of us to learn how to do. And because almost all of you are love coaches or on the love coach track, to help your clients and your friends with. So thank you for that, Laura. That was great. That was really wonderful. Who's up next? Angel, Bali, or in Bali.
Hi, everyone. I'm happy to be on the call here and be joining. So this morning, I was taking time for my morning practice and got an interruption from my partner, which put me into a state of annoyance and agitation. And that felt like an instant burning in my solar plexus, and like a lightness and activation up, kind of leading into this state of agitation internally as well as externally. And I, well, she needs were in that time, I kind of just paused and took a quick but then deep breath and let that go, and then just went into a experience of feeling proud because I took that pause and then just reminded her of what my need was in that moment, to have my need and my time for my morning practice respected, and reminding her that this was important to me and that she hadn't asked for time to share what her need was at the time. So just to honor our agreement around about asking consent for sharing. So that felt really good, and it was well received on each end.
Beautiful. Again, I'm just really appreciating the clarity. And actually, that was a great love coach tool to help couples. isn't it amazing how couples automatically feel like, well, because we're a couple, I can now immediately intrude on your reality with what's important to me, right? God bless Emily. She had that one when we were living together. I mean, she would come bursting in with whatever was going on for her, you know. So yeah, it's again, it's harder to set boundaries, especially in intimate relationships, because often there is that sense of, well, you're my lover, you're my couple, you know, and yet we still have to actually ask permission and create containers, and that's otherwise resentment happens. So thank you for sharing that one, Angel. That was a good one. All right, Anaprabha. Can't hear you. Can't hear you, Anaprabha.
I got it. Yeah. Hi.
Oh,
Hi.
there we go. Okay.
Yeah, got it. Yeah, figured it out. I'm on that phone. Yeah, thanks for that last feedback, Angel and Scott, because it also can, I think, you know, when you have children and as they grow up and have a teenager. So I think, you know, it's really important for me to remember to knock on his door before I just go charging in there and wanting him to do something or get up or do the dishes or, you know, and I really have been wanting to, you know, practice that, you know, with him. So I appreciate kind of the remembrance. I have to have some discipline there. And so, you know, for me today, I had a really kind of engaged, focused day, which I really felt good about. And unfortunately, my timing, I didn't get back to my house. And so I'm in my car in the Target parking lot feeling kind of really frustrated and disappointed because I was so looking forward to, you know, this class. And so I get with this frustration and disappointment, I kind of felt this contraction and sort of some negative like self-talk of like, why didn't you, you know, plan better, you know, and I sort of pulled myself back into like, okay, this is a perfectly human moment. I don't have to be perfect. It's okay. And that really calmed my nervous system down. And, you know, and so that felt, so I was able to relax actually and accept that I'm not perfect and that I'm here doing the best I can and really feeling grateful that I get to be sharing in this, you know, emotional alchemy class.
Oh, love
everybody.
You.
Yes, I love you too.
You all have heard me say how perfectly human, and what we can always say is how perfectly Anuprabha. You know, and that's a wonderful thing to do. It's like when someone we love is doing what they do, just to go up, how perfectly Anuprabha, how perfectly Mimi, how perfectly Scott or Emily or Ona Ray or Angel or whoever. You know, it's just we all are sometimes just perfectly who we are and what we do, and lightening it up. You know, and it's interesting listening to you and to Laura and to Angel. There's like this kind of consistency of when you kind of reach acceptance, you know, just reaching acceptance of it, that it softens, it relaxes. You know, we go from frustrated and agitated to more relaxed. So beautiful. Mimi, we haven't heard from you yet. Are you ready?
I think so. Is this working?
It's working. We gotcha.
Yay.
Hey.
All right. Today, hi beauties. Today, this morning, I was meditating, got really excited, and headed out for my walk, and the dogs had crapped in the garage. So, and I have a large dog and a small dog, so there was a lot. And so my first like was like rage, and I felt it like in my shoulders, like this movement forward in my shoulders, and so that, and then the tightness in the jaw, so the chest, the jaw. So that was like my, you know, how to calm, way the F down. So I cleaned all of that up. So that was like my first connection to like a really big, strong emotion. And then I got them out for their walk on our property behind the house. And I took a breath, and I like recognized that my shoulders went back. I could feel the breathing all the way into my lower back, and a lot more clarity. Like the sky was really pretty, the leaves became really crisp. So I would say that those were my two, like the second one being peacefulness, just this overwhelming peacefulness and desire to connect and breathe. So I felt like oxygen. I felt the depletion of oxygen with like my shoulders going forward, and then the remembrance of oxygen, round two.
What a good point about the depletion of oxygen, right? Like when we're contracted and we're not breathing fully. And it's interesting, both Mimi and somebody else talked about everything becoming, when we were more expansive, when you had shifted into a more expansive place, all the colors were more vivid, right? So, but I really appreciate that connection about our oxygen intake and how we're experiencing the external world. That's really a good one. We haven't heard from a couple partners. We haven't heard from Hannah, although we heard from Jason. We haven't heard from Rob, although we heard from Laura. And having a partner who speaks doesn't get you off the hot seat. So nobody ever has to go. But Hannah or Rob, do you want to share?
Hi guys, I just want to say that Rob is just.
I can tell him.
Okay.
I'm just really under the weather today. I woke up really tired, just heaviness in my head, and I just haven't slept in 2 days. I have a dog that sleeps next to me, and she snores. Oh,
She snores. She's
horribly.
like almost 9, and she's a pit bull. And
Oh.
I'm going on a couple days no sleep, and I feel like I'm probably getting sick right now. So.
All right. Well, let's all send Rob blessings of
no.
healing. Hannah, do you want to share?
Yes, thank you. Hi, everybody. The two, well, the first and probably most pronounced feeling today was a feeling of panic. I think that's probably the best way to put it, like disconnect, panic. I felt it in my reptile brain, of course. Well, not of course. I could see why I experienced it at other places, but I felt it in the back of my head and kind of just an overall sensation of my heart pumping more than it usually would. And I also experienced a sense of elation, relief, gratitude, and a really positive phone call I had with someone, and it felt very connective, and that was very heart-centered, very heart-expansive, and warming sensations on my body, throughout my body.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing. I'm really glad to have you both with us. All right. So now, everybody, be honest. Who did the homework assignment of watching the movie Inside Out? And who didn't do the homework assignment of watching the movie Inside Out?
I thought we were just supposed to watch the pieces of it. I didn't realize you wanted
Yeah,
to.
no, it's okay to watch just the 2 pieces or to watch the whole movie. Yeah. Okay, cool. So I'm not going to bother then showing the trailer, but just as a reminder, I'll bring up on the share screen. So most of you have seen the movie either before or as part of the homework assignment. And a reminder that these are the 5 major characters that they chose to, have: sadness, joy, fear, disgust, and anger. And in a moment, I'm going to show a scene that just has sadness and joy in it. But it's probably my favorite scene in the movie. It's one of the 2 scenes that we asked people to watch. And what's powerful about this scene, especially for those of us that are love coaches, is to, in the scene, Joy tries to make Bing Bong happy. Bing Bong is the imaginary play friend of Riley, the teenage girl whose brain we're inside. And because she's now a teenager, she doesn't play with her play friend anymore, right? Her imaginary friend that was her dear friend when she was a little kid, she doesn't think about him or play with him anymore. So he's very sad and very lonely. and a lot of their toys get pushed aside. And joy is trying to cheer him up, but that's not what he needs. He needs empathy. And so sadness comes along and gives empathy. And it's a great reminder for us, because when somebody's blue, there's that innate desire to fix it, to make them feel better, right? And this scene just really shows that there's times that sadness is what we actually need. So let's go to share computer sound and make sure I've got the right one. Okay, we're gonna do this. Here we go.
The stuffed animal Hall of Fame! My rocket! Wait, Riley and I were still using that rocket. It still has some song power left. Who's your friend who likes to play? No, you can't take my rocket to the dump. Riley and I are going to the moon. Riley can't be done with me.
Hey, it's gonna be okay. We can fix this. We just need to get back to headquarters. Which way to the train station?
I had a whole trip planned for us.
Hey, who's ticklish, huh? Here comes the tickle monster. Hey, Bing Bong, look at this. Oh, here's a fun game. You point to the train station and we all go there. Won't that be fun? Come on, let's go to the train station.
I'm sorry they took your rocket. They took something that you loved. It's gone. Forever.
Sadness. Don't make him feel worse.
Sorry.
It's all I had left of Riley.
I bet you and Riley had great adventures.
Oh, they were wonderful. Once we flew back in time. We had breakfast twice that day.
Sadness!
It sounds amazing. I bet Riley liked it.
Oh, she did. We were best friends.
Yeah, it's sad.
I'm okay now. Come on, the train station is this way.
How did you do that?
I don't know. He was sad, so I listened to what...
Hey! There's the train!
Oh, we made it! We're finally gonna... No, his faction up his...
Okay. I don't know about you, but I cry every time I see that scene. Yeah. So I'd just like to open up to any thoughts, anything that came up for anybody as you watched that. What, any thoughts, reflections, Mimi?
It was beautiful today because I just finished watching that, and then my 12-year-old was crying, and she was talking about just how sad she was, and that she feels really isolated, and that she wants to be very isolated, and she wants to move out. She's ready to move out and be her own person, so she doesn't have to do dishes anymore. And so so to sit there right after watching that and be like, yeah, adulting is hard. 12 is hard, you know. You're expected, like, there's another level that comes after 12. Like there's like this innocence that can go away if you're not careful. So it was so beautiful to have just watched that scene and then sit there, because I didn't try to fix it. I noticed that I really was defensive, like, am I not doing something right? But just to show up and hold that space with her and thank her for showing up. So yeah, so thank you. And I just really feel like she asked me, what did I do when I was a kid? And I had, like, it was horrific for me when I was a kid, sharing a room with a dying person for like almost 2 years. And so at 12, I was like, wow, well, I was suicidal at 12, May. So I'm grateful that, you know, that this is, I get it. I get how heavy it is to be asked to do adult things. So yeah. And for her, it was dishes. And so like the old me would have been like, what are you talking about? It's dishes, you know? But by going through this course, I'm like, yeah, whatever you're being called to do at 12, there's a different mindset and a different shift that happens away from childhood. And it's developing a different part of who a person becomes. So how to integrate that with childhood and innocence.
Wow. Thank you, Mimi. That was a really beautiful show. Let's all twinkle, Mimi. That was beautiful.
Thank you, Receive. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I'm touched by a lot of what you said, but especially the piece of, wow, losing the purity, losing the innocence. Like, how can we grow up? How can we mature and remain connected to that innocence, that purity? And that's I mean, boy, we could do a whole show just on that, can't we? Anybody else want to share? Anna Prabha. Can't hear you.
Here we go. Sorry about that. Yeah, beautiful sharing and the really good example of a love coach. And you know, and this is, I think, you know, when you're growing up, when we're all growing up, if we get acknowledged and it's safe to have our emotions, whether it be, you know, it's sadness, for someone to really acknowledge, like, it's okay to be sad and to and understand that and talk about it, or angry and make it to be okay to be angry, happy, okay to be happy. And that really allows, I think, a young person, or any, you know, starting out as a young person, to have that freedom to have any emotion and to be understood in that emotion, creates a really safe place for them to be and to understand their emotions. So that's you know, beautiful to see that in that movie, and how powerful that is for, you know, all the adults to see that when they're raising their kids.
Yeah, thank you.
And for us as adults too. Yeah.
Maybe one more share, Laura.
Hi guys. You know, the part that was tricky for me, you know, of course I loved seeing how sadness took over and Joy was trying to talk her out of her feelings. And that's, you know, kind of like it's a safety mechanism for us when people are having a problem. But the part where I got a little tripped up is, like, I was really leaning into last night when we were watching it, like, what were sadness's words, right? Like, because it's for me, it's scary to not make it worse for the person when they're in distress or when they're sad. And I noticed that sadness really, like, said some very pointed things. Of course they weren't mean or anything, but, you know, like it's gone forever, right? Remember the little the rocket. So but of course it seemed okay, but that part is a little bit unnerving when you didn't grow up being able to do that, you know, like how to say, you know, wow, you know, your life really sucks right now. But, you know, not in those words, but, you know, but because sadness said some very pointed things in that, like, you know, to Bing Bong.
So my understanding is that what she did was she acknowledged his reality. So we'll use the rocket. The rocket is gone forever. That's the reality. Now, that's not about who he is. It's about an action that's taken place that is why he's sad. He's sad because the rocket's gone forever, right? And this is I'm glad you brought it up, because it's so easy for us to not acknowledge another person's reality, right? Mimi, you know, and her daughter, right? It would be really easy for Mimi to get triggered when the daughter is saying at age 12, I want to move out of the house because I don't want to do dishes, right? It'd be pretty easy to not acknowledge her daughter's reality, because from a certain perspective, it's a ridiculous statement, right? It's ridiculous. And we could easily go into judgment of how ridiculous that is. Obviously, she's not going to move out at age 12 because she doesn't want to do the dishes. But instead, because Mimi had just seen the film or the scene, she stayed present into the other person's reality. And this is a really important love coaching tip. You will work with people, or you'll be in situations where someone's having a very strong emotional response as a reaction to something that's not even true. Okay, that happens every day. But we don't lead by saying, no, that's not even true. We lead by acknowledging what they're feeling. We lead by acknowledging what they're feeling. Even if that feeling is a reaction, we could call it a hallucination. But even if someone's hallucinating, they're still in discomfort. They're still in pain, all right? And this is a really, really important thing for us to learn as human beings and to learn as love coaches, is never deny another person's reality. You don't have to agree with the hallucination, but whatever they're feeling is real in the moment. He was sad, right? So sadness felt the sadness with him. And he was sad because the rocket was gone forever, went down the pit. So learning to drop into another person's reality, even when their reality is really uncomfortable, doesn't mean we add to it, right? And also we differentiate between circumstances and who a person is, right? The circumstance is the rocket went down the pit. The circumstance is the daughter doesn't want to have to do dishes. It's, she doesn't want to have to do that. Now, when we give empathy, we're not reinforcing who a person is. We're acknowledging their feelings. We're acknowledging their emotions. And remember, our emotions are always real in the moment. We never want to deny another person's emotional state. And oftentimes we do that because their emotions are a reaction to something that isn't true or that we don't agree with. Does that make sense to everybody? And so I'm really glad you brought that up, because it's a really common thing. So there's Jason.
Thank you. Yeah, if you don't mind, I just had an awareness I think I can capture pretty quickly that I think is really important in this, that scene that you just shared from the film really illustrates, and I was able to see it for the first time in a really clear way, that it seems to me that a big part of empathy is about connection and returning to the feeling of connection. And when Joy came along and tried to change the way Bing Bong was feeling, I could see, and it was obvious there on the screen because they're animated characters, there's this Bing Bong character over here, and there's Sadness who's all like blue and gloomy, and then there's Joy who's literally glowing and bright, that there was this obvious contrast between the energetic state of the characters. And one of the reasons that Sadness was able to be so present to Bing Bong is that Sadness was resonating, you might say, at the same frequency that the character was resonating at in that moment. And so even though if that's not the case, like if we're having a conversation and there's a need for empathy, I can do that, or she can do that with a part of us by showing that we understand what the other person is experiencing, which allows us to have the feeling that there's a part of that other person that is matching our vibration, or at least not disconnected from our feeling experience. So I thought that was really visible in that moment.
Beautiful. Thank you, Jason. Yeah, I mean, you really summed it up beautifully. Thank you. That's all Twinkle Jason. That was wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. So what we're going to move into next is some self-inquiry of what are the emotions that I deny myself? What are the emotions that I don't allow myself to experience? And again, one of the standard things we say in Love Coach Academy is that all emotions are welcome. All emotions are welcome here. And we all have certain emotions. Sometimes they're comfortable emotions and sometimes they're uncomfortable ones that we don't allow ourselves to experience. And probably, one of the most common examples in our culture is anger. And so I'm going to bring up another slide for us to look at. And this is a great thing. Can everybody see that okay? Yep. It's the anger iceberg. And so a lot of people have been raised, especially men, to believe that anger is okay. A lot of people have been raised to believe that anger is not okay. So there are people who stuff their anger, which is very common. But this is what people, usually men, that don't want to acknowledge more vulnerable feelings, so they get angry. And underneath the anger, look at all those uncomfortable feelings. Can you all read them? Read it okay? Give a thumbs up, Mimi, if you, okay, great. And it's so true. And so as coaches, when we're working with someone who gets angry, or even just in our real life, when somebody's angry, they're angry because they have certain needs that aren't being met. And they're also angry because it may be covering an emotion that they're uncomfortable with. So just as you look at this, think of someone you know who gets angry often, an angry person in your life. And as you think about that person, what do you think might be some of the underlying emotions that person's disconnected from that they're covering with the anger? I'm thinking of a client that I'm working with who has a teenage daughter who's cutting herself. And she's really, really unhappy. And he's got so much guilt because of some of the choices he made that led to her being really unhappy. And she's actually at a treatment center right now because she keeps cutting herself, really severely cutting herself. And he's angry all the time with his wife, but it's really displaced aggression. And he finally acknowledged the other night with us that it's because he feels so guilty. And so his anger at his wife is the displaced aggression that's really covering his guilt. So stop the screen share and would love to open it up. Anybody want to share an example that comes up from your life of someone you can think of? Anuprabha and then Hannah. Can't hear you, Anuprabha.
Yeah, I had this aha moment because I've seen the anger iceberg before, but it really, like looking deeply at it, like enlarging it, having a moment, and I realized this was so amazing. When my mother died, her husband, who was like an angel, just out of nowhere, the whole family, I was there with my kids and helped with the whole passing. It was really a beautiful time. And then when we came home, all of a sudden, over something very small, he blew up into a rage and just became like, it was frightening. And then I realized, now seeing that, I just realized that he was overwhelmed, probably anxious, stressed, depressed, and as a male, just as this male who he is, he couldn't express, the only way he could express any of those emotions was just by being angry. Because I think if he would have really went into the hurt and the sorrow, it would have been, too much for him.
Thank you for sharing that, Anuprabha. Mm-hmm. And by the way, I did put the anger iceberg just now into the Facebook Messenger group because we got a request for that. I saw somebody else raise their hand. Hannah.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
And I rose my hand prematurely, so I thought you were going to ask if anyone had an example of a feeling that they repressed, that there's an underlying feeling toward, but I can answer the other question. I know someone who has a pattern of getting angry, and it's because usually it's something along the lines of that they're running a story that they're not being seen or appreciated. So there's an underlying feeling of loneliness or disconnection that's actually underneath the anger.
Right. Okay, thank you. Thank you. So, you know, the flip side is those of us who stuff our anger. And I did that for a long time. I believed anger was bad. I grew up believing that angry people were bad people or were dangerous people because my mother never got angry and my father never got angry. They just quietly got divorced when I was 10 years old. And my dad, literally, you know, who became my best friend, said, you know, if I really gotten angry at your mother, we might not have gotten divorced. If I had allowed my anger to get out, but it's like he stuffed it, and then started having affairs, and, you know, it went to hell. And it wasn't really until I met Marshall Rosenberg and traveled with him and talked with him and then taught in the prison system that I came to realize that anger is a natural human emotion. It doesn't make somebody bad. It's a way to acknowledge unmet needs. And so I've actually done a 180-degree turn on anger. Now when people get angry, it opens my heart. As long as I know that I'm not in physical danger. And I'm almost never in physical danger. So, but very often we get afraid of a person's anger. So just a reminder, this is a Scott teaching. We want to share, if we're angry, we want to share anger for the purpose of being understood. That's healthy. Sharing anger for the purpose of being understood is healthy. Using anger as a weapon to hurt another person is unhealthy. So let's say I'm angry with Angel because he was late for an appointment together. What's healthy would be for me to say, Angel, I'm really angry and I want to share with you why I'm angry and how this impacted me, okay? You're not responsible for my anger. It's my anger. But as my friend and as someone I love, I need some empathy right now, so I want you to understand why I get so angry, right? That's cool. What would be cool is you make me so angry. You always do this. Now I'm using a weapon. You make me angry, not true. Angel did what Angel did. My emotional response was anger. It's my emotional response. Nobody can make me angry. People do what they do. We have our emotional response. And then if I say you always do that, now I'm hitting over the head and I'm making a value judgment. I'm now hitting him over the head with my anger. So just remember, sharing anger with for the purpose of being understood, as opposed to using anger at for the purpose of hurting somebody or punishing them. Is that clear to everybody? Is a differentiation? Cool. Okay, I'm going to pull up the list of emotions, and I'm going to pull it up slowly, and I want for you to write down or take note of which of these feelings you don't experience, okay? And I'm actually going to start with comfortable emotions. Remember, our comfortable emotions, what we would probably say are, you know, the pleasant ones, take place when our needs are met. But some of us don't even allow ourselves certain comfortable emotions. So let me bring it up first. Okay, here it is. And let's see if I can find it. Okay, there we go. Share. Okay. Everybody see that? And let me make it a little larger. There we go. The ones in bold are the categories, and the ones underneath are kind of the various versions, the various variations of affectionate or the variations of excited. Which of these words do you go, wow, I don't do giddy? Wow, I'm rarely tranquil, whatever it might be. And yeah, write them down in the chat box. As you notice words that you're disconnected from, that you don't experience, put it in the chat box. Again, you'll find the chat box when I've got screen share, it's in the upper right-hand corner, usually of your toolbar. And then you can open it up. I'm going to go back up in case you want to see what's at the top again. So I'm going to stop the screen share and just to open it up. Does anybody want to share a word that surprised you when you saw it and you realized, wow, I struggle with that? And then we might do a little bit of a dive to see why you have a block to that word or to that feeling. Anybody want to do a deep dive? Debbie and then Mimi.
Okay, so a couple of them stuck out actually, and I was surprised. Proud. I don't go into that feeling a whole lot. Being just still. And then currently in the present moment, rejuvenated is not something I haven't allowed myself to be in that space.
Wow. So let's just explore this a little bit. And this is, something that you as coaches can kind of, because this is a wonderful way to learn about someone. And I love learning about all of you. So Debbie, in terms of not feeling still, how long has it been like that? Like, when was the last time you really were still? Can you remember a time when you were last still?
Yeah, this morning in meditation, but even then I found myself getting noises and distraction. Yesterday morning, 24 hours ago, I had the ability to get into meditation and be still twice because I'm working on it. I'm always going. I always think I have to be doing something and so stopping and making myself do it is something I have to be very intentional with lately, to be still.
Is there,
and
the part of you that feels driven, is that connected, and I'm really just guessing, this may or may not be true, is that connected to being a mother and having a son that's living with you? Is it a sense of responsibility that keeps you in the feeling of, I gotta make things happen, gotta make sure money is coming in, gotta make sure everything's okay?
100%. And I think sometimes if I stay really busy, then I can go into a bit of avoidance. I'm not really wanting to deal with something in my own life. If something's bothering me or whatever.
Yeah. So thank you. One of the things. No, go ahead.
I would say, because how when you get really still, everybody, and that's like sometimes if your monkey brain's going, you haven't calmed it down yet, and so anything I want to avoid kind of goes, oh hi, hey, what's up? And I'm like, yeah, no, I'll just get busy again.
Right.
So, but 100% on the factor of responsibility and what that looks like right now.
It's really common
you.
for parents, especially for mothers, to be in that state of hypervigilance, hyper-awareness. If you've got a small child, hypervigilance that they're not sticking their finger into an electrical socket or, eating something they're not supposed to eat. But even older, then by that time you've been in the habit for so long of take care of the kids, take care of the kids, take care of the kids, it becomes a lifestyle. It becomes a lifestyle to be constantly thinking about the family. What's the kids need? What's the husband need? What's the, and then it becomes just like a complete habit of being. And I've worked with a lot of mothers, especially. It's somewhat true with some fathers, but I think it's easier for men to disconnect and disengage and check out, whereas mothers tend to be much more hyper-focused, hyper-vigilant. One more exploration, and that is about proud. What would you say is the reason you have trouble experiencing pride?
I'm cocky as it is, and I am confident, but I don't like to be conceited and prideful. That's not an attribute that I would like to aspire to.
Mm-hmm.
So the word proud has still a different connotation to it for me than I think what it's meaning here on the list. To be proud of ourselves when we accomplish something is good, but yeah, I have an association with that word that doesn't make me feel good. I want to show up and just do it authentically and without an attachment, and somehow that pridefulness kind of just feels like a conceited. I don't know. I don't like the word.
Okay. Yeah. So okay. Well. Yeah. So. Yeah. In that case, pride is. I mean, that makes sense. It's the word has a negative association for you. So actually, that's kind of cool. Where I was thinking it might be is sometimes people don't want to feel proud because they had a father or parent figure that never let them celebrate their accomplishments. It's like, you can always do better. You can always, don't be too proud to continue to learn or grow, which is kind of a common thing. But yeah, I get it. I mean, definitely pride can be and has been sometimes seen as a negative. So thank you for sharing, Debbie.
Thank you. I do love what you brought up. So I was just going to say that I do agree with you, but it was more, I was taught not to be the conceited, prideful type versus I was celebrated when I accomplished things. So it's just interesting you brought that up. Thank you.
Yeah. No, thank you. And thank you, Angel, for what you put in the chat box. And anybody else who wants to put, what they're learning and noticing about themselves in the chat box, that'd be great. Mimi, what came up for you?
Yes, thank you to Debbie, because I really resonated with, am I coming through?
Yes, we hear you well.
Debbie, I just really appreciated that, I appreciated everything that you said, but I just really resonate with rest. Like I was just piecing together last night that I've been raising children for 30 years. So I've raised children longer than I've been an adult to the age of 18, and then I started raising children. And so rest has been like, what is that? and I go a lot, and I go a lot more. And so I grew up with this mentality of like literally that rest was just not something that was looked at as a good thing. Like if you have rest, you have too much time on your hands because there is so much to be done. How can you possibly rest? So like even this morning, I was laying in bed and I'm like breathing and getting ready to meditate and even that, like remember to breathe, remember to get into your breath, and that's the closest thing that I can think of when I think of rest, and is breath, and that's beautiful. But when I think of rest, I'm like I imagine like palm trees, ocean, and not having somebody wake me up at some hour needing something, or that I need to get on a plane to get back to do something else. And so that's intriguing. I'm just really grateful that that word came up for me. Yeah, that's a beautiful word, rest.
Yeah, how can you create rest without waiting for once a year when you get to go to Hawaii, right? How can you create rest in the midst
restful,
of your busy, chaotic day?
To do, yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah,
Okay, thank you, Mimi. All right, I'm going to bring the list back up, and now we're going to look at uncomfortable feelings. And what I'm going to do is I want you to, again, write down in the chat box the uncomfortable feelings that come up for you. But then we're going to break out into pods. We're going to break up into, I think, I'll do 3 pods where everybody can kind of, talk a little bit more amongst themselves. Anuprabha, Debbie, and Angel, would you be willing to be pod leaders? Yes? Okay, great. Cool. All right. So let's go back to uncomfortable feelings. And again, you might be surprised to see which words are here. And again, pop them in the chat box. Which ones do you not allow yourself to experience? Which of these words do you disassociate from or disconnect from or ignore? You could just say maybe that you ignore. Mm. All right. I'm going to ask for one person to share for the group, and while you do the share, I'm going to create the breakout rooms. Who would like to share what came up for them? Laura.
All right. Well, I just felt the pressure since no one was raising their hand.
Oh, well, thank you.
I'm kidding. But anyway, you know, I wrote, it's really hard to admit this stuff, but I'm trying to get back to where but I think it was ashamed and I can't see what I wrote. Hang on a second. I said ashamed and, oh yeah, cranky. Oh my God, God forbid I'm cranky. And helpless. Those are ones that are really hard for me to admit to myself if I'm feeling any one of those ones.
Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. I'm still creating the breakout rooms, so give me a minute. Okay. So there's going to be 3 or 4 people in each breakout room. Obviously, we've got the couples together. And so during kind of the next 15 minutes, and I'll bounce into each room and visit you guys, I'd like for each person to take time, say 2 or 3 minutes, to really talk about either why they have a struggle with a particular emotion. And you can kind of do some deep dive. Oh, I noticed that I made an agreement that I would never be like my father. My father would get angry. Or, you know, I was shamed for being confused. Or I was taught that, you know, whatever it is, that pride isn't a good thing. So just, there's no right or wrong, but we're all getting to know each other, okay? And so pod leaders, just make sure everybody has a fair amount of time. We're going to give you, let's do 20 minutes, and I'll bring everybody back at 7:31, or at 7:30, 19 minutes, and we'll just do a conclusion, okay? So I'm opening the rooms, and you all need to just click join room, and I will come in and visit each of you for a little bit. And again, you got to click join room on your device to get there. Debbie, have you done that? Okay. Aaron, I did put you into a room, if you can hear me, I did put you into a room with Debbie Garcia. So hopefully you'll be able to join her. And I'm going to pause this.
And being jealous of her. And I really, and mine was, it reminded me how much, you know, she was in a poly relationship, and it just brought up how the opposite I am. She doesn't like to have anyone lay claim. And my, you know, thing is like, I like to lay claim, actually. I like to have that closed, you know, relationship. And so it was just the remembrance, you know, it's the groups that we get, it brings out, reminds us of our fragileness and our shadow sides. Actually.
Yeah. Boy, yeah, I mean, jealousy, we could do a whole class just on jealousy. And the distinction between jealousy and envy. You know, I recently did my first Facebook Live with Emily in 15 months. And I realized that I'm very envious of her relationship with Michael. I'm not jealous, but I'm envious. And it's helped me to understand the difference between the two. Okay, next pod leader. How about Angel? Let's get a report from Angel.
Hi. Yeah, we had two participants share around hate, the discomfort with the word hate as a very strong, intense word, and that I think many of us perhaps can relate to in terms of the difficulty of that. We explored a little bit of how that made us feel in terms of towards something, when hate is like being projected outwards towards somebody because of something that perhaps they did or said. And then also explored a little bit of how that may differentiate from how the experience, the feeling of hate feels internally. And I asked whether it was perhaps because of the intensity associated with hate, whether it was an internal experience and difficulty with this high degree of intensity in the body, or other things, you know? So we were kind of exploring what it felt like versus what it meant, or what stories it was tied to externally. The other one was fear and the experience of fear. And they shared just a really profound experience of being in fear around somebody that you love and that you love so dearly, and the kind of their experience of feeling perhaps not being able to do anything about it. And so this fear that comes from loving so deeply and yet not being able to change it or to do something. So it was really, really touching for me in particular. I'm sure for the other people as well. And yeah, just how difficult it is to deal with fear, whether that's on an occasional basis or on a day-to-day basis. And many people, that's their state. For others, it is more of a situationally based experience. And then I shared a little bit about myself. I couldn't remember actually a word that I didn't have my list, but I shared how I tend to be not risk avoidant, but I kind of lean into risk because my experience is that I like to test and grow from the difficult experiences in life and kind of walk the edges more. So it was an interesting, because a lot of the difficult emotions are ones that I seem to be working with more currently over the last few years to become more comfortable with, to become more comfortable with discomfort. That's been a big part of my path. Yeah.
Well, thank you. What a rich group you had. And yeah, I mean, dealing with fear and hate. Wow, powerful. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Debbie Garcia, I am putting the spotlight on you to get the summary of what took place in your group.
We had a love fest. So as we dove in, we had a love fest as we dove into harder emotions and talking about the harder stuff. And both participants were really, really extraordinary at their expression of the things that were harder and being able to actually connect where it was stemming from. And what I was experiencing with them is this awareness of the harder emotion, but they're not avoiding it, and they're really looking at it. I mean, they've really been doing their work. And so the deep dive was more into the beautiful mindfulness that they both were sharing about. And then we expanded a little bit further with talking about both of them sharing the ways in which they shift when they're in these uncomfortable spaces. The hate came up a little bit as I avoid that, and a couple other people, it's kind of an avoidance thing, like it's just not a comfortable space to be in at all. So thank you, Angel. There was just this beautiful commonality of understanding these things in life that we take as being a harder emotion, and how that we had a love fest in our expression with each other. And it was a gentle guidance more than a hard expression of something that we don't like to deal with. And I appreciate both of the participants so very much. Thank you for all of it. Made it so much easier to do it this way.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you, Debbie. Thank you, everybody. Let's everybody twinkle everybody else. I want to say one thing about hate, and then I'm going to turn over to Paul for a minute, or a few minutes to wrap up. But remember that when we experience, or somebody's experiencing hatred, which of their values are not being met, and to differentiate between hating or disliking the being versus what that being represents or what that being has done, right? And obviously, we never want to hate another being, but we don't want to deny if we're having a strong revulsion, right? What are the values or choices that person is representing to us? And then we flip it into how important those values are. So I'm going to use an obvious one, and I don't mean to get political or offend anybody, but let's say somebody hates Donald Trump. Well, are you hating who he is as a human being? Because actually I think he's kind of a sad and pathetic character. Or are you hating what he represents? The lying, the bullying, right? So then you realize, okay, what it really is let's just say it's those. I hate the lying and I hate the bullying. So you flip it. It doesn't meet your value for honesty and your value for safety and your value for kindness. And so now it's not about who Donald Trump is, but it becomes the values that are important to you that aren't being met by the way you see him. And so that's where we can flip even something like hate around and take it out of attack mode and into self-understanding mode. Does that make sense to everybody? Yeah, cool. So that'll be my final little teaching for the night. And I want to turn over to Paul for a minute because Paul's a great coach. And he's been a significant part of Love Coach Academy, both studying with us and helping to create with me. And he has an offering that I strongly support. So I'm putting the spotlight on you, Paul.
Thank you, Scott. And actually, just so everybody knows, this was not planned. I was coming on to just join everybody, and I had talked to Scott about this, and he said, well, why don't you talk to everybody? And so to lean in, my two things that I realize I avoid, I hate feeling helplessness. I notice I get angry when that comes up. Like that's my defensive mode. And embarrassment, which is wonderful because I'm dyslexic and grammarly impaired and spend all day writing and hitting send and then going like, no, don't, no. So, and then I wrote a book. So that was really a challenge. What I'm doing, though, that I talked to Scott about is I took a workshop, or it was actually a teleseminar I did a while ago and made it evergreen. So I put it up on the web and it covers 3 areas. The 5 mistakes to avoid. So talking to somebody who's triggered, a lot of times the way we talk ends up pushing people away. And so it's good to know how to avoid these 5 things, which are case building, storytelling, message assuming, cup stuffing, and the fatal F's. How to avoid those without avoiding talking about the issues. And then it takes a deep dive into the 4 steps to instant intimacy, which is, Scott teaches it, I teach it. We're all students of Marshall Rosenberg's, that, it's a different way of looking at his stuff. And then it goes into the 7 keys. So it's like 3 modules. Each module has a different focus. And I'm needing 2 things. I'm needing some beta testers because there's been people going through the modules to give me feedback. Like I said, ADD, grammarly impaired, dyslexic. There's spelling errors, there's grammar errors, there's all sorts of glitches. So I need people to kind of point those out. Rather than avoiding them, I'm leaning into them. Brownie points for finding them. And if people are ready to take it on and you just want another slice, another way of looking at what we're all studying here, I would gladly have some people go through it. Like it's only going to be $129 when it's all ready to go. But I thought I'd get some people to go through it for like $69 just to try it and give me their feedback. That's not being a beta tester. Well, it's sort of being a beta tester, but just give me your feedback. Don't have to spell anything. Don't have to do any of that. That's all. I really wasn't planning on talking about it tonight, but I always love talking about the things I love. Any questions? Oh, here, I'll put the 2 links up there.
Yeah, pop the links into the chat box.
That's the link if you want to purchase it. And I think the best thing would be just to get a hold of me and I'll give you a special discount, because if you go there, it's $129. And here is the beta test link. And let me know either way if you want to be a beta tester and go through. There's a journal that goes with it. There's exercises. It's just another set of distinctions about what you're already learning. One of my teachers once said, mastery is the art of making finer and finer distinctions in a given area. It's not someplace you arrive, it's the direction you go. And so for those of you who are headed in this direction, this would be an interesting, another way of looking at things. And I'd appreciate your feedback and making a difference. And I listened to it. The truth of the matter, this whole thing came about because I was going to re-record everything, and I listened to it, and I started taking notes, and I went, wow, this is really good shit. So rather than re-record it and put that energy into it, I'm just going to like build around it.
Yeah, I really want to recommend. I think that you'll find Paul's work is, again, for those of you especially in coupleships, or wanting to be in a healthy coupleship, he's got really great tools. Because he learned them all from me. No, just kidding.
I learned a lot.
No, he really has great tools and very great perspectives. And also for those of you who are wanting to be love coaches or are relationship coaches, again, you're going to pick up some really great tools. And Paul is like the master of simplifying things. And it's like the 5 Ps, the 3 things, the 2 thises, and he's really got that down.
I will give you, I'll give you one example of that. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of things that impact or influence your relationship. There is one system that is driving it. If you understand that system, you've got a shot at it. If you don't, not so much. And there are 7 skills, they're right behind me, that you master those skills, they make up 80 or 90% of your relationship. And it's taken me 25 years to kind of distill it down to that. And that is, I'm going to be starting on that in December. The first thing I talked about was, the course is called Bridging the Gap Between Us, Compassionate Communication Course for Couples. That's the little course. The bigger course that starts in December is going to go through all 7 of the tools. So
highly recommended. Highly recommended. And Mimi.
Yes, can I ask a question really quickly, please? My question is, what is the time commitment for that? Like, is it an ongoing class, or is it, first of all, it's great to see you. Wonderful to see you. Second, what is the time commitment for what you're looking for?
The course, the Bridging the Gap course it's 3 modules. Each module is about an hour and 15 to an hour and a half. The modules are broken into lessons that are about 15 to 26 minutes long. So there's 3 modules. So that's like about maybe 4 hours of listening time. And then depends on how much you do with the homework.
Okay, thank you.
All right. All right, well, I'll twinkle Paul. Thank you for your brilliant work and offering. And thank you, everybody, for being here on a Wednesday night. I'm getting feedback, so I gotta mute that. Thank you, everybody. Each and every one of you is really special. It was great to have a couple of new people join us, Angel and Paul, tonight. And I look forward to hopefully seeing all of you on Saturday morning. God's blessings, and have a wonderful week. Take care, everybody, and good night.